When Klaus Weber walked into the camp commandant's office at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in May 1943, he expected punishment, interrogation, or worse. But what the American colonel placed in his hands left him speechless. Seeds, tomato seeds, bean seeds, cabbage seeds, and a handwritten note that said, "The north field behind Barrack 7 has been cleared for prisoner use. Plant whatever you want, tend it however you like, and keep everything you grow." Klaus stared at those tiny seeds like they were diamonds, unable to process why his captors would give him the tools to create life when everything he'd known about war involved nothing but destruction. For a man who had spent 3 years watching German soldiers destroy crops and burn fields across occupied Europe, the idea that American enemies would trust him with agriculture, with the power to grow food, seemed like a fever dream that challenged everything he thought he knew about captivity and conquest. Klaus had grown up on his grandfather's farm in Bavaria, where every sunrise meant another day of coaxing life from soil, where the rhythm of planting and harvesting defined the passage of time more reliably than any calendar. When he was drafted into the Wehrmacht in 1940, he had to abandon not just his family, but his identity as someone who created rather than destroyed, someone who fed people rather than killed them. The military campaigns across Poland, France, and eventually North Africa had taken him further and further from everything that gave his life meaning, until being captured by American forces seemed less like defeat and more like liberation from a nightmare he never wanted to be part of. But even in his wildest hopes, he never imagined that captivity might offer him the chance to return to the work he loved. The American decision to allow German prisoners to establish vegetable gardens wasn't motivated by kindness alone. It was strategic brilliance disguised as humanitarian policy that served multiple practical purposes while demonstrating democratic values in action. Camp administrators quickly realized that prisoners who were occupied with meaningful work were less likely to cause disciplinary problems, attempt escapes, or develop the psychological problems that came from enforced idleness and despair. But more importantly, fresh vegetables grown by prisoners could supplement camp food supplies, reduce costs, and provide nutritional variety that improved everyone's health and morale. Colonel James Morrison, commandant at Fort Leonard Wood, explained his reasoning in a report to his superiors. "These men are farmers and gardeners by background and training. Allowing them to practice their skills benefits the camp, demonstrates American respect for honest labor, and maintains prisoner morale while teaching them that democracy rewards productivity, rather than punishing it." The psychological transformation that occurred when German prisoners were handed garden tools instead of punishment was immediate and profound. Werner Schmidt, a former panzer mechanic who had never shown interest in agriculture, found himself volunteering for garden duty simply because it offered the opportunity to create something positive after years of mechanical destruction. He wrote in his diary, "Today I planted carrots in American soil. My hands, which once repaired tanks designed to kill, are now coaxing life from earth that belongs to my enemies. I cannot explain the peace this brings to my soul. But for the first time since this war began, I feel like I am doing God's work instead of the devil's." The act of planting, tending, and harvesting connected these men to fundamental human activities that transcended national boundaries and military conflicts. The variety and quality of vegetables grown in POW camp gardens surprised both prisoners and guards, with their abundance and excellence, demonstrating that German agricultural knowledge could thrive even in unfamiliar American soil and climate conditions. The gardens produced tomatoes, beans, cabbage, potatoes, carrots, onions, lettuce, peppers, and herbs that rivaled anything grown by local American farmers. Some prisoners applied advanced agricultural techniques they had learned in Germany, including crop rotation, companion planting, and organic fertilization methods that increased yields and improved soil quality. The success of these gardens caught the attention of local agricultural extension agents who visited camps to observe German farming methods and exchange knowledge about soil management and pest control. The cultural exchange that developed around vegetable Gardens created unexpected connections between German prisoners and American guards, administrators, and local farmers who shared common interests in agriculture and food production. Sergeant Robert Murphy from Iowa, whose family had farmed for 3 generations, found himself spending off-duty hours learning about German vegetable varieties and cultivation techniques from prisoners who had managed large farms before the war. These conversations revealed that farming created universal bonds that transcended nationality and politics. The challenges of weather, soil conditions, plant diseases, and harvest timing were the same whether you were growing food in Iowa or Bavaria. Murphy later wrote to his wife, "These German fellows know more about growing vegetables than most American farmers I've met. They're teaching me techniques that would increase our yields back home, and I'm sharing what I know about American growing, conditions, and equipment." The impact of garden work on prisoner health and morale was documented by medical personnel who observed significant improvements in both physical and mental well-being among prisoners who participated in agricultural activities. The physical exercise involved in digging, planting, weeding, and harvesting provided fitness benefits that counteracted the negative effects of confinement and sedentary camp life. More importantly, the psychological benefits of purposeful work and the satisfaction of producing food created positive mental health outcomes that reduced depression, anxiety, and behavioral problems. Dr. Margaret Foster, a psychiatrist consulting at several Midwest POW camps, noted in her reports that prisoners involved in gardening showed markedly improved mood, better sleep patterns, reduced aggression, and more cooperative behavior with camp authorities. The economic impact of prisoner-grown vegetables was substantial enough to influence camp budgets and demonstrate the financial benefits of productive prisoner activities. Fresh vegetables produced by POW gardens reduced food costs by thousands of dollars per month at large camps, while providing nutritional variety that improved overall health and reduced medical expenses. Some camps were able to sell surplus vegetables to local markets, generating revenue that was used to purchase additional seeds, tools, and equipment that expanded agricultural programs. Camp administrators discovered that supporting prisoner agriculture was not just humane policy but sound fiscal management that benefited everyone involved. The religious and spiritual dimensions of agricultural work resonated powerfully with prisoners who found in gardening a connection to divine creation and natural cycles that provided comfort and meaning during their captivity. Many prisoners had grown up in rural communities where farming was understood as cooperation with God's creative work, and the opportunity to plant and nurture life offered spiritual satisfaction that transcended physical circumstances. Father Heinrich Weber, a Catholic chaplain among the prisoners at Camp Ellis, Illinois, organized communal garden plots that became focal points for prayers and religious observances tied to planting and harvest seasons. He wrote about the theological significance of prison gardens. In tending these plants, we participate in God's continuing creation. These vegetables remind us that life persists even in captivity, that beauty and nourishment can grow even in the midst of human conflict. The educational aspects of prison gardening programs introduced American agricultural methods and crop varieties to German farmers who would eventually return home with expanded knowledge that could benefit European food production. American camp personnel shared information about hybrid seeds, mechanized farming equipment, soil testing, and agricultural chemistry that represented advances unknown in wartime Europe. Heinrich Müller, a former agricultural student who had been drafted before completing his degree, used his time in captivity to learn about American farming innovations through books, magazines, and conversations with knowledgeable guards and administrators. He maintained detailed notes about American agricultural techniques that he planned to implement when he returned to Germany after the war. The seasonal rhythm of garden work provided structure and hope for prisoners who were uncertain about their futures and disconnected from the familiar patterns of civilian life. Planting in spring offered optimism about future harvests. Summer cultivation provided daily purpose and routine, and autumn harvests created tangible evidence of accomplishment and productivity. These seasonal cycles connected prisoners to natural rhythms that existed before the war and would continue after it ended, providing psychological anchoring that helped maintain mental stability and emotional resilience during the uncertainty of captivity. The anticipation of harvest created something to look forward to beyond the end of the war. Immediate, achievable goals that provided satisfaction and purpose. The community building that occurred around shared garden work created positive social dynamics among prisoners who might otherwise have been divided by military rank, regional differences, or political disagreements. Working together to prepare soil, plant seeds, and tend crops required cooperation and mutual support that broke down hierarchies and created new relationships based on shared labor and common goals. Former officers worked alongside enlisted men, city dwellers learned from rural farmers, and young soldiers received guidance from older, more experienced prisoners. These collaborative relationships demonstrated democratic principles in action and provided practical experience in the kind of cooperation that would be necessary for rebuilding post-war Germany. The preservation and sharing of seeds created informal networks among prisoners that connected different camps and maintained German agricultural heritage even in captivity. Prisoners saved seeds from successful plants and shared them with fellow Germans at other camps, creating seed exchanges that preserved varieties from their homeland while adapting them to American growing conditions. These seed networks became symbols of cultural continuity and hope for the future, tangible connections to home that could survive imprisonment and eventually be replanted in German soil after the war ended. The success of prison gardens attracted attention from American agricultural colleges, extension services, and farming organizations that recognized the expertise and knowledge represented by German agricultural prisoners. Some camps arranged for agricultural students and researchers to visit and learn from prisoners who had managed large European farms or studied advanced agricultural techniques before the war. These exchanges benefited American agriculture while providing prisoners with opportunities to share their knowledge and maintain their professional identities despite their circumstances. The documentation of prison garden activities through photographs, reports, and correspondence provides evidence of one of the most successful rehabilitation and morale programs implemented in American POW camps. The images of prisoners tending vegetables, the detailed reports of harvest yields, and the letters home describing agricultural activities all demonstrate the positive impact of allowing enemy prisoners to engage in productive, meaningful work that connected them to fundamental human activities of growing food and sustaining life. The long-term impact of prison gardening experiences influenced the agricultural practices and attitudes of German farmers who returned home after the war with new knowledge and positive associations with American agricultural methods. Many former prisoners became advocates for agricultural modernization in Germany, promoting American farming techniques, equipment, and crop varieties that improved European food production during the crucial post-war recovery period. Their experiences in American prison camps had taught them that former enemies could be sources of valuable knowledge and that international agricultural cooperation could benefit everyone involved. The letters written by prisoners about their gardening experiences provide intimate insights into the psychological and emotional impact of being allowed to grow food while in enemy captivity. These letters, preserved in family archives and historical collections, reveal the profound meaning that agricultural work held for men who had been separated from their rural backgrounds and forced into roles as soldiers and destroyers. The simple act of planting a seed and watching it grow represented hope, creativity, and connection to life-giving activities that contrasted sharply with the death and destruction they had witnessed during military service. Today, the story of German prisoners growing vegetables in American camps serves as testimony to the power of meaningful work and productive activity to transform the experience of captivity from purely punitive to genuinely rehabilitative. The decision to provide prisoners with seeds, tools, and land demonstrated American confidence in democratic values that emphasized human dignity. The value of honest labor, and the possibility of redemption and transformation even for former enemies. The vegetables that grew in those prison gardens became symbols of life emerging from conflict, hope growing from despair, and former enemies learning to create rather than destroy.